Hermione Granger and the Philosopher's Stone. Chapter 11. Quidditch. As they entered November, the weather turned very cold. The mountains around the school became icy gray and the lake like chilled steel. Every morning, the ground was covered in frost. Hagrid could be seen from the upstairs windows defrosting broomsticks on the Quidditch field, bundled up in a long moleskin overcoat, rabbit fur gloves, and an enormous beaver skin boots. The Quidditch season had begun. On Saturday, Harry would be playing in his first match after weeks of training, Gryffindor versus Slytherin. If Gryffindor won, they would move up into second place in the House Championship and surpass Ravenclaw. Parvati was on pins and needles. There was a lot of trash talk in the Great Hall between her and her sister. Hermione thought a lot about what happened in the second floor's lavatory. She had nearly died because she chose to be alone. That's what it came down to. She hated how dramatic it sounded, but it was really true. She had also thought about how Harry and Ron, who obviously didn't like her, made a point of saving her regardless of their feelings. They went out of their way to find her and fight a 12-foot troll. Hermione thought that was pretty admirable. She genuinely wanted to be their friend. They were exciting and brave and loyal, all of the attributes of a Gryffindor. Her change of heart was also furthered along by a conversation with Professor McGonagall. A few days after Halloween, she asked Hermione to stay behind after Transfiguration class. Have you recovered from your little incident? Professor McGonagall asked curtly. Yes, Professor, Hermione said, her eyes on the ground. Or perhaps I should ask if you recovered from your stubbornness in thinking you could take on a troll by yourself. Yes, Professor, Hermione repeated. Miss Granger, Professor McGonagall took a deep breath. You are perhaps one of the smartest students in Hogwarts history. Hermione's eyes snapped up. I implore you to use your smarts outside of the classroom too. Yes, Professor. Now that is out of the way, Professor McGonagall cracked a smile. I would like to talk to you about your time thus far at Hogwarts. How have you been acclimating? Hermione thought for a moment. Well, I think, Professor, I'm going to start asking for even more extra work, so I. Yes, you have certainly acclimated to your studies. I don't doubt that. But what about everything else? Hermione didn't know how to respond. Professor McGonagall continued. I'm extremely proud of your academic achievements, but there is more to your wizarding education than what it is on your class books. As a Gryffindor, I expect you to demonstrate courage, chivalry, and determination in addition to your studies. And, so there is no confusion, attempting to face a mountain troll alone shall not be confused with courage. Yes, Professor. Hermione's eyes went back to the ground. The bubble of anxiety was rising. Courage, chivalry, and determination can mean different things to different people. In your case, Miss Granger, I believe it has to do with your ability to take the leap and make meaningful relationships with your peers. You feel secure in your studies and retreat there when things get difficult. Hermione nearly gasped. It was as if Professor McGonagall was reading her mind. Stepping out of your comfort zone and letting friends in would be the ultimate display of bravery and determination. Professor McGonagall paused. Hermione could tell she was waiting for a reply. Yes, Professor, was all she could manage. Please don't misunderstand me. I do not mean to sound critical. I just want you to reach your full potential, Miss Granger. I think you're destined for great things. Professor McGonagall said as she put her hand on Hermione's shoulder in a rare moment of compassion. Very great things. She paused and smiled. As disappointed as I was to find you with that troll, I was also pleased to find you with Mr. Potter. I was hoping you'd find each other here in Hogwarts. What do you mean, Professor? Professor McGonagall paused, searching for the right words. Mr. Potter is as skilled at friendship as you are at academics. You'd be a very good influence on him, and you, as long as you stay away from trolls. I think my troll fighting days are over, Hermione said. I should hope so, said Professor McGonagall. Okay, now off you go. But please promise me you'll come to me if you ever find yourself in trouble. Of course, Professor, Hermione said, but had no intentions of telling Professor McGonagall her theory on what was under the trapdoor yet. Hermione left Professor McGonagall's office and walked back to her dormitory. The professor was right. She did need to work on the other aspects of being a Gryffindor. Hermione made it a point to thank Parvati for coming in to check on her. Sorry I told you to go away in the lavatory, Hermione said the morning after the incident with the troll, while they were going over some notes. It's okay, said Parvati. Besides, if I had stayed, I'd have been attacked by the troll too. I knew that. That's why I told you to leave, said Hermione, completely deadpan. Parvati looked at her for a moment before realizing Hermione had actually just made a joke for the first time since she knew her. They both giggled, and Hermione smiled. She was getting the hang of this friendship thing. Hermione found out the real story about what happened during their flying lessons and the broom that came in the mail. Harry had demonstrated such amazing flying skills when he caught Neville's Remembrall. Professor McGonagall made an exception to the rule, barring first years from joining the house Quidditch team, and allowed him to get a broom. In the spirit of their new friendship, Hermione tried not to be irked that Harry had been basically awarded for breaking the rules. She also trusted Professor McGonagall's judgment. There was no denying Harry was a skilled Quidditch player. During some downtime in her dorm room, Hermione begrudgingly asked Faye to explain Quidditch to her so she could support her new friend. Her library copy of Quidditch Through the Ages, which she loaned to Harry, didn't really explain the actual game basics. The object of the game is to score more points than your opponents. Each goal is worth 10 points, and catching the golden snitch is worth 150 points. Faye rattled on. The game is played by two teams of 7 people, 3 chasers, 2 beaters, 1 keeper, and 1 seeker, and involves 4 balls, a quaffle, 2 bludgers, and a golden snitch. The game starts with the referee releasing all 4 balls from the central circle. The keeper guards the goalposts, while the 3 chasers score goals with a quaffle by tossing it into one of the opposing team's 3 goalposts. The 2 beaters keep the bludgers away from their team and hit the bludgers towards the opposite team. And the seeker catches the golden snitch to end the game. The team whose seeker catches the snitch is awarded 150 points. But this does not necessarily mean they will win if the other team still has more points after the snitch is caught. Faye offered to draw Hermione some diagrams, but she said no. She just needed to know the absolute basics so she didn't cheer at the wrong times. With the addition of the extra Quidditch practices, Harry was having a lot of trouble keeping up with his classes. Hermione was all too happy to help, even if it meant helping Ron as well. Hermione still preferred Harry over Ron, but knew one came with the other. Ron was being extra nice to her anyways, probably because of the whole nightmare comment that nearly killed her, so Hermione didn't mind much. There were even some times where she actually enjoyed his company. Hermione had been a bit more relaxed about breaking rules, though a small bubble of anxiety still came up each time. She was really trying to let loose a bit more, but still keep a good handle on Harry, like Professor McGonagall had insinuated. The day before Harry's first Quidditch match, the 3 of them were out in the freezing courtyard during break. She had conjured them up a bright blue fire that could be carried around in a jam jar. Hermione was quite proud of herself for the advanced magic and was pleased when the two boys seemed really impressed with her work. They were standing with their backs to it, getting warm, when Snape crossed the yard. They all noticed at once that Snape was limping. Harry, Ron, and Hermione moved closer together to block the fire from view. Hermione was thankful that they were covering for her. Unfortunately, something about their guilty faces must have caught Snape's eye. He limped over. What's that you got there, Potter? It was Hermione's copy of Quidditch Through the Ages. Harry showed him the book, much to Hermione's chagrin, though she supposed it was better than the flame. Library books are not to be taken outside the school, said Snape. Give it to me. 5 points from Gryffindor. He's just made that rule up, Harry muttered angrily as Snape limped away. Wonder what's wrong with his leg. Don't know, but I hope it's really hurting him, said Harry bitterly. Hermione couldn't help but agree. She still hadn't figured out Snape and his utter contempt for Harry. The Gryffindor common room was very noisy that evening. Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat together next to a window overlooking the snow-covered grounds. Hermione was checking Harry and Ron's charms homework for them. She knew they just wanted to copy her work, but she was adamant against it. I'll help you as much as you need it, she said. But if you copy, how will you learn? Parvati had been doing loads better in her classes thanks to Hermione's help, so the boys had to just trust her methods. Harry stood up suddenly. I'm going to ask Snape for that copy of Quidditch Through the Ages back, he said, steadying his jaw. Hermione smiled inwardly. How nice. Harry was going to get her book back, so Madame Prince, the Hogwarts librarian, wouldn't get angry she didn't return it herself. Better you than me, Hermione and Ron said as Harry walked towards the portrait door, leaving them alone for the first time since their friendship began. Hermione was nervous, but wasn't quite sure why. So, how many brothers do you have? Hermione blurted out. It was time to be brave and open herself up to new friendships. 5 and 1 sister, Jeannie. She's a year younger. Wow, so 7 kids. Your parents must be positively saints. And Hermione thought it explained Ron's behavior. With that many brothers, it was no wonder Ron was so good at making little digs at people. He had a lot of practice. Yeah, I suppose so, Ron said as he scratched out something on his paper. My mom and dad are okay, I guess. What are you scratching out? Let me see. Ron handed her over the parchment. It took Hermione a moment to decipher the atrocious handwriting. Oh, you almost had it. It was Emmerich the Evil, not Ulrich the Oddball, who was killed by Egbert the Egregious. I always get those two messed up, Ron sighed as Hermione passed back his parchment. How about you? Oh no, I can keep them straight because of the E's. No, I mean brothers and sisters. Do you have any? Oh no, I'm an only child. Wicked, Ron said as he finished writing Emmerich the Evil's name over the scratched out part. And you were raised by muggles, yeah? That must have been cool. I guess, Hermione said, confused. Why would being raised by muggles cool? My dad loves muggles. He's always tinkering with some sort of muggle contraption. I really wanted to go through the leaky cauldron to London when we were at Diagon Alley to get our school supplies, but Mum wouldn't let me. Ron looked up. So what's it like? London? Muggles in general. Oh, dreadfully boring comparing to this. Hermione laughed. Harry told me that your photographs and portraits don't move, said Ron. Is that really true? Hermione grabbed her bag and dug around for a moment. She pulled out a picture of her, Mary, and Bert. Hermione was so used to the wizarding world, it seemed odd, even to her, that they weren't moving. Yeah, it's true. See? You're right. That is boring, Ron said, examining the picture and turning it over in his hands. So that's your mom and dad? They look nice. Yeah, they are, Hermione said with a smile. At least they were the last year or so. What did they think of you being a witch? Hermione paused for a moment. I think they were happy for me. No, I know they were happy for me. It was just a lot for them to take in, though. We are very practical people. So learning there is this whole world full of magic was slightly overwhelming. Are they as smart as you? Ron asked with earnest. Hermione felt a weird, warm feeling spread through her body. She wasn't exactly sure what it was. Oh, they're both brilliant, she said. They're dentists. Dentists? Ron asked. What are dentists? A muggle doctor for people's teeth. Oh, so like a healer? Kind of. But they can't use magic, obviously, Hermione said. Oh, I'll have to tell my dad about it. He'd be fascinated. Ron paused a moment. Do you think you would be able to write down some stuff about dentists so I can give it to my dad for Christmas? He'd love it. Sure, Hermione smiled. The warm feeling wouldn't go away. Wicked, thanks. There was a lull in the conversation, but it wasn't awkward at all. They went back to their classwork and barely noticed Harry running in through the common room until he was right next to them. Did you get it? Ron asked as Harry joined them. What's the matter? Harry was out of breath. I thought that if there were other teachers around, Snape wouldn't be as much of a prick, Harry said through his gasps. So I went to the staff room and knocked, but no one answered. I opened the door, and there was Snape and Filch, and Snape had his robes up and his leg was all bloody. And then he said, Blasted thing. How are you supposed to keep your eyes on all three heads at once? Harry paused for dramatic effect. You know what this means? He finished breathlessly. He tried to get past that three-headed dog on Halloween. That's where he was going when we saw him. He's after whatever it's guarding. And I'd bet my broomstick he let that troll in to make a diversion. Hermione's eyes went wide. No, he wouldn't, she said. I know he's not very nice, but he wouldn't try and steal something Dumbledore was keeping safe. Honestly, Hermione, you think all teachers are saints or something? Said Ron. The warm feeling started to fade away, but Hermione tried to tell herself this was just how Ron was and to not take it personally. I'm with Harry. I wouldn't put anything past Snape. But what's he after? What's that dog guarding? What was that dog guarding? Hermione had her theories, of course, but wanted to be sure before she shared them. The next morning dawned very bright and cold. The great hall was full of the delicious smell of fried sausages and the cheerful chatter of everyone looking forward to a good Quidditch match. You've got to eat some breakfast. I don't want anything. Just a bit of toast, coaxed Hermione. She was really worried about him. I'm not hungry. Harry, you need your strength, said Seamus Finnegan. Seekers are always the ones who get clobbered by the other team. Thanks, Seamus, said Harry. By 11 o'clock, the whole school seemed to be out in the stands around the Quidditch pitch. Many students had binoculars. The seats might be raised high in the air, but it was still difficult to see what was going on sometimes. Hermione couldn't help but feel a little excited, even though she still wasn't a Quidditch fan. Ron and Hermione joined Neville, Seamus, and Dean up in the top row. They passed Faye and Alice on their way up. Faye was already hoarse from screaming, and the game hadn't even started. As a surprise for Harry, they had painted a large banner on a sheet. Hermione was worried they'd get in trouble for defacing school property, but Ron assured her his pet rat Scabbers had already ruined it. On the sheet, it said, Potter for President, and Dean, who was good at drawing, had done a large Gryffindor lion underneath. Hermione wanted to contribute, so she performed the tricky little charm she had just learned to make the paint flash different colors. Hermione wanted to sit with Parvati too, but Parvati wanted to sit near her sister and do some more trash talking. They agreed to meet up after the game. Finally, it was time for the match. Harry, Fred, George, and the other Gryffindor players walked out of the locker room and out onto the pitch. The crowd roared as Hermione yelled along with them. The Slytherins walked out as well, and all of the Gryffindors booed just as loudly as they had cheered. This is kind of fun, Hermione thought to herself. Madame Hooch was refereeing. She took in the middle of the field. She stood in the middle of the field waiting for the two teams, her broom in her hand. Now, I want a nice fair game, all of you, she said, once they were all gathered around her. Mount your brooms, please. Hermione watched Harry clamber into his Nimbus 2000. Madame Hooch gave a loud blast on her silver whistle. 15 brooms rose up, high into the air. They were off. Fred and George's friend, Lee Jordan, the student with that dreadful tarantula on the Hogwarts Express, was the commentator for the game. Hermione found it remarkably helpful, even if Lee was slightly biased. And the quaffle is taken immediately by Angelina Johnson of Gryffindor. What an excellent chaser that girl is, and rather attractive too. Jordan! They all heard Professor McGonagall yell. Sorry, Professor. And she's really belting along up there. A neat pass to Alicia Spinett. A good find of Oliver Woods last year, only reserve. Back to Johnson, and no, the Slytherins have taken the quaffle. Slytherin Captain Marcus Flint gains the quaffle, and off he goes. Flint flying like an eagle up there. He's going to no, stopped by an excellent move by Gryffindor keeper Wood, and the Gryffindors take the quaffle. That's Chaser Katie Bell of Gryffindor there. Nice dive around Flint. Off up the field, and ouch! That must have hurt. Hit in the back of the head by a bludger. Quaffle taken by the Slytherins. That's Adrian Pusey speeding off towards the goalpost, but he's blocked by a second bludger, sent his way by Fred or George Weasley, can't tell which. Nice play by the Gryffindor beater anyway, and Johnson's back in possession of the quaffle. A clear field ahead, and off she goes. She's really flying. Dodges a spinning bludger. The goalposts are ahead. Come on now, Angelina. Keeper Bletchley dives, misses. Gryffindor scores! Gryffindor cheers filled the cold air with howls and moans from the Slytherins. Hermione was exhilarated. Watch up there. I'll move along. Hagrid! Ron exclaimed. Hermione looked over and saw the giant from their first day at Hogwarts. She had learned he was the gamekeeper of the grounds of Hogwarts and had befriended Harry and Ron. Ron and Hermione squeezed together to give Hagrid enough space to join them, which was quite a bit. Been watching from my hut, said Hagrid, patting a large pair of binoculars around his neck. But it isn't the same as being in the crowd. No sign of the snitch yet? Huh? Nope, said Ron. Harry hasn't much to do yet. Keep out of trouble, though. That's something, said Hagrid, raising his binoculars and peering skyward at the speck that was Harry. Way up above them, Harry was gliding over the game, squinting about for some sign of the snitch. Slithering in possession, Lee Jordan was saying. Chaser Pusey ducks 2 bludgers, 2 Weasleys, and Chaser Bell, and speeds toward the... Wait a moment. Was that a snitch? A murmur ran through the crowd. Hermione strained her eyes. She couldn't see anything, but Harry did. He dived downward after the streak of gold. Slytherin seeker Terence Higgs had seen it too. Neck and neck, they hurtled towards the snitch. All the chasers seemed to have forgotten what they were supposed to be doing as they hung in midair to watch. Harry was faster than Higgs. He put on an extra spurt of speed. Wham! A roar of rage echoed from the Gryffindors below. Marcus Flint had blocked Harry on purpose, and Harry's broom spun off course. Harry, holding on for dear life, Hermione gasped and grabbed Ron's arm. Oh, sorry, she said when she realized what she had done, but Ron didn't seem to notice. Foul! Ron screamed as he was joined by the majority of the Gryffindors in the stands. Hermione didn't really know what the foul was, but she joined them all in yelling. Madam Hooch spoke angrily to Flynn, and then ordered a free shot at the goal post from Gryffindor. But it was all the confusion. Of course, the golden snitch. In all the confusion, of course, the golden snitch had disappeared from sight again. Down in the stands, Dean Thomas was yelling, "Send him off, ref! Red card!" "What are you talking about, Dean?" said Ron. "Red card!" said Dean furiously. "In football, you get shown the red card and you're out of the game." "But this isn't football, Dean," Ron reminded him. Hagrid, however, was on Dean's side. "They ought to change the rules. Flynn could have knocked Harry out of the air." Lee Jordan was finding it difficult not to take sides. "So, after that obvious and disgusting bit of cheating, Jordan," growled Professor McGonagall. "I mean, after that open and revolting foul, Jordan, I'm warning you." All right, all right. Flint nearly kills the Gryffindor sneaker, which could happen to anyone, I'm sure. So a penalty to Gryffindor taken by Spinette, who puts it away. No trouble, and we continue play. Gryffindor still in possession. It was as Harry dodged another bullet, which went spinning dangerously past his head, that it happened. His broom gave a sudden, frightening lurch. Harry was almost thrown from his broom. It was happening again. Another huge lurch. Then the broom started zigzagging throughout the air, and every now and then making violent swishing movements that almost unseated him. Hermione gasped again. Didn't anyone notice Harry was in trouble? Lee was still commentating. "Slithering in possession. Flint with a quaffle, passes Spinette, passes Bell, hit hard in the face by a bludger. Hope it broke his nose. Only joking, Professor. Slytherin score. Oh no." Hermione was beside herself. She knew she didn't know much about Quidditch, but she was quite sure a broom shouldn't behave that way. She had to save Harry. She started to rack her brain to figure out what could possibly be the problem. "Don't know what Harris think he's doing," Hagrid mumbled. Finally, someone else had noticed. He stared through his binoculars. "If I didn't know better, I'd say he lost control of his broom. But he can't have." Suddenly, people were pointing up at Harry all over the stands. His broom had started to roll over and over, with him only just managing to hold on. Then the whole crowd gasped. Harry's broom had given a wild jerk, and Harry swung it off. It was now dangling from it, holding on with only one hand. "Did something happen to it when Flint blocked him?" Seamus whispered. "Can't have," Hagrid said, his voice shaking. "Can't nothing interfere with a broomstick, except powerful dark magic. No kid could do that to a Nimbus 2000. At those words, Hermione seized Hagrid's binoculars, but instead of looking up at Harry, she started looking frantically at the crowd. There had to be someone bewitching the broom. But who? The thought hit Hermione like a ton of bricks, and she swung the binoculars over to the Slytherin stance. "What are you doing?" moaned moaned Ron, grey-faced. "I knew it," Hermione gasped. "Snape, look." Ron grabbed the binoculars. Snape was in the middle of the stands opposite them. He had his eyes fixed on Harry and was muttering non-stop under his breath. "He's doing something, jinxing the broom," said Hermione. "What should we do?" Hermione knew exactly what to do. "Leave it to me." Before Ron could say another word, Hermione ran down the steps and into the walkways beneath the stands. She had never run so fast in her life. Her heart was pounding out of her chest. She was developing a stitch in her side. As she ran, she tried to come up with a plan. She had to break Snape's concentration, but with what? Suddenly she had an idea. The stitch in her side went away and she seemed to move faster. Finally, she made it to the Slytherin stands and up to the row behind Snape. She didn't even stop to say sorry as she knocked Professor Quirrell headfirst onto the row in front. Reaching Snape, she crouched down, pulled out her wand, and whispered a few well-chosen words. Bright blue flames shot from her wand into the hem of Snape's robes. Hermione didn't let herself think about the repercussions of lighting a professor on fire. All she could think of was saving Harry. It took perhaps 30 seconds for Snape to realize that he was on fire. A sudden yelp told her she had done her job. Scooping the fire off him into a little jar in her pocket, she scrambled back along the row. Hermione would never know what had happened, thank God. It was enough. Up in the air, Harry was suddenly able to clamber back into his broom. Hermione let out a sigh of relief. Harry started to speed towards the ground when the crowd saw him clap his hand to his mouth as though he was about to be sick. He hit the field on all fours, coughed, and something gold fell into his hand. I've got the snitch, he shouted, waving it above his head, and the game ended in complete confusion. Hermione was glad she wasn't the only one not knowing what was going on. Finally, it was determined Harry broke no rules, and Gryffindor was declared the winning team. Harry was just as happy as the students and invited Hermione, Ron, and Harry back to his hut for a celebratory tea. She was fascinated by the giant and eager to learn more about him. It was Snape, Ron was explaining. Hermione and I saw him. He was cursing your broomstick, muttering. He wouldn't take his eyes off you. Rubbish, said Hagrid, who hadn't heard a word of what had gone on next to him on the stands. Why would Snape do something like that? Harry, Ron, and Hermione looked at one another, wondering what to tell him. I found out something about him, Harry told Hagrid. He tried to get past that three-headed dog on Halloween. It bit him. We think he was trying to steal whatever it's guarding. Hagrid dropped the teapot. What do you know about Fluffy? He said. Fluffy? Yeah, he's mine. Bought him off a Greek chappie I met in the pub last year. I lent him to Dumbledore to guard the... Yes? Said Harry eagerly. Now don't ask me any more, said Hagrid gruffly. That's top secret, that is. But Snape's trying to steal it. Rubbish, said Hagrid again. Snape's a Hogwarts teacher. He'd do nothing of the sort. So why did he just try and kill Harry? Cried Hermione. Clearly, that was the only plausible explanation. I know a jinx when I see one, Hagrid. I've read all about them. You've got to keep eye contact, and Snape wasn't blinking at all. I saw him. I'm telling you, you're wrong, said Harry hotly. I don't know why Harry's broom acted like that, but Snape wouldn't try and kill a student. Now listen to me, all three of you. You meddling in things you don't concern. It's dangerous. You forget that dog, and you forget what's guarding. That's between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Aha, said Harry. So there's something or someone called Nicholas Flamel involved in, is there? Hagrid looked furious with himself. Hermione smiled. It was time for research, her favorite thing in the world.